Good evening, everyone. My name is Bruce Preston. I'm the current chairperson for membership with the Cincinnati Men's Chorus, and I want to welcome you all to Lifting Every Voice, Singing for Equality. I think it's especially fitting that we're doing this on the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, finally granting women the right to vote. So we're going to explore intersectionality and the way that it is used through music, choral music, with two different Cincinnati choirs. This evening is made possible by more than 1,600 ArtsWave Pride members who give generously to ArtsWave's community campaign. ArtsWave Pride is a group that welcomes and connects LGBTQIA+ individuals and allies. Thanks to sponsor PNC Bank, ArtsWave Pride members receive complimentary invitations to ArtsWave Pride events hosted by ArtsWave-supported organizations. The current ArtsWave campaign runs through the end of this month. Please consider supporting the essential work done by ArtsWave. You can become a member of ArtsWave Pride by checking the box when making your annual ArtsWave contribution. If you're able to increase this year's contribution over last year's contribution, a portion of that increase will also support the work of ArtsWave Pride. And you can also become an ArtsWave Pride ambassador with an additional contribution beyond your community campaign donation, starting at just $150 or more. All of that donation will go directly towards funding LGBTQ+ artists and programming in the greater Cincinnati area. This evening, we are very lucky to have two wonderful arts organizations with us. Muse, Cincinnati's women's choir, has been around since 1984. It has been their mission to create music that raises awareness and inspires change in our world. Muse is an inclusive and feminist choral community advocating for peace and social justice. They unite their voices to raise awareness and inspire change in themselves, their audience, and our world through partnerships that honor the humanity and enduring spirit of all people. Muse and Cincinnati Men's Chorus are members of GALA, the Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses. This year, we would have gathered for the Quadrennial Festival in Minneapolis, but unfortunately, the pandemic got in the way of that. So these are the videos we're going to watch that would have introduced Muse and Cincinnati Men's Chorus at their performances at GALA. Let's start with the Muse introductory video.
Muse.
Muse.
Muse. Muse. I love Muse.
When I first heard them, it was as if a jolt of electricity went through me.
Muse is a really special choir because we want everyone to have equal access to our music.
The integrity of the music and what we want to say always has to be delivered.
We sing about social justice, and that gives life and joy to our music.
We bring people together and build community.
And one of the things that we value is diversity.
No matter what the song is we're singing, if it affects someone, it affects them all.
We love to sing for social justice organizations.
We go to the Pride Festival.
Women for Women.
Black family reunion, and sing songs that are important to them.
Every member has a voice.
We also highly encourage audience participation.
Nothing brings people together in your community like music.
Muse is a wonderful group. We're lucky to have them with us, and we're lucky to have them in Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Men's Chorus is getting ready to celebrate their 30th season. They are a chorus of gay, straight, bi, and trans men who, through their music, strive for excellence, support and nurture their members, entertain their audiences, and work for social justice, inclusion, and harmony between the LGBTQ community and the community at large. Here's the Cincinnati Men's Chorus Gala introductory video.
Hi, I'm Steve Malloy, the Artistic Director of the Cincinnati Men's Chorus. I sing because I love the versatility of the human voice. It can do any style you want it to. And also it can evoke any emotion. You know, singing changes lives. Sometimes it may lift up someone's heart. Sometimes it may get them through a session of the blues. You never know unless you sing. We sing because
it helps me escape from the world.
Because it brings out the best in me.
It gives me joy, it gives me energy, and it lifts me up.
It makes me feel good.
I can't imagine living in a world where I didn't sing someplace.
For music and family.
The chorus is my family.
And there's no better way to do it.
We are the Cincinnati Men's Chorus.
That's a little bit of an introduction to each group. And now I'd like to introduce the panel to you. We're very lucky to have a wonderful panel comprised from both choral organizations. Jillian Okenfell is a professor of marketing and faculty director of diversity and inclusion in Miami University's Farmer School of Business. She is the leading academic researcher on marketing to LGBTQ consumers with a focus on social identity and the intersection of marketplaces and social movement. She is a contributing writer on cultural leadership skills for a VUCA world for Forbes.com. Jillian is a proud 20-year member of Muse, reveling in the soprano twos. She and her wife Cindy have 3 sons, all who attend Cincinnati public schools. Welcome, Jillian.
It's lovely to be here, Bruce.
Alistair Kraft is a writer, editor, devoted pet parent, and increasingly active social justice advocate, born and raised in Cincinnati. Alistair is a proud member of the Cincinnati Men's Chorus baritone section. Good evening, Alistair.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
Jillian Harrison-Jones is the music director for Muse, Cincinnati Women's Choir, and she is also the director of choirs at the historic Witherspoon Presbyterian Church of Indianapolis, Indiana. She is a 4th-year doctoral student in choral conducting at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, currently writing her dissertation on effective virtual concert planning amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Very timely. As an author, clinician, vocal coach, conductor, and lyric soprano, Jillian's expertise is in the performance, practice, and scholarship of African-American spirituals and gospel music. She devotes her career to redeeming the forgotten and lesser-known choral works of African-American composers and training the next generation of social justice-driven conductors, especially women. Jillian is also the co-author of Amazon's bestseller entitled Empower Now for Women. Welcome, Jillian.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Steve Malloy is the artistic director of the Cincinnati Men's Chorus and music director at St. John United Church of Christ in Bellevue, Kentucky. Steve has spent over 3 decades coaching and directing singers in schools, churches, theaters, and concert stages across the United States. He has also directed the Martin Luther King Coalition Chorale and the Diverse City Youth Chorus. Steve co-authored the popular voice work series for Oxford University Press, and his original choral work, Bayard Rustin, The Man Behind the Dream, premiered in January of 2017 and has been performed by several choruses throughout the United States. Steve received his BA in music from Miami University and an MM in conducting from the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Bruce.
Mark Johnson has been a member of the Cincinnati Men's Chorus since 1992. His first concert with CMC was also their first Pride concert. He is a past president of the Cincinnati Men's Chorus Board of Directors and has served as the board development director. He is currently the first tenor section leader and second assistant to the artistic director. That's a mouthful. Mark has also serving currently as the music minister at Gaines United Methodist Church. Good evening, Mark.
Hey, Bruce.
And last but absolutely not least, Charmaine Moore-Kitzini is in her 15th year with Muse. She is a soprano 2 section leader, board member, and also serves as the assistant director for Muse. Charmaine has worked in arts administration for 15 years, working with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and Cincinnati Opera. She holds a BM from The Ohio State University. Good evening, Charmaine.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So this is a wonderful panel. Enough of me talking about them. Let's talk with them. And I think we'll start with Jillian. Jillian wrote an amazing article that was published at the end of June in Forbes.com online, and it looked at intersectionality in marketing. Jillian, let's start with the month of June and why exactly it is that we are typically out waving our rainbow flags and celebrating during the month of June.
Except for this year, but you can't cancel Pride. That was a P&G-led campaign, by the way. So June 28, 1969 was the Stonewall riots. And just to give a little background, Stonewall Inn was a small little bar in Lower Manhattan. It was actually owned by the mafia. And it was bought by the mafia so that they could blackmail gay patrons and threaten them with having them come out. It also gouged them in terms of prices, but you had a really marginalized LGBT population that were dealing with violence, dealing with stigmatism, dealing with harassment, and this was really the place where they could be. It wasn't the first time that it had been raided, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It had actually been raided the previous night, but that night they'd had enough. So the police came in undercover and targeted bartenders, targeted trans women generally. Oftentimes they used really trumped up charges to arrest them and to take them in. And it was one of those nights, I think, much like this summer, where you had a marginalized community that finally stood up and said they'd had enough. And so a year later, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So a year later they decided that they would have a parade, and it was decided it would be the third Saturday of every June. And so the first Pride parade was that following in 1970 on June 28th, they had the first parade.
And while those were riots that then turned into pride parades and celebrations, there actually had been a little bit of organizing before that. There was the Daughters of Bilitis, the Mattachine Society.
Yes.
But with the riots, it really, something sparked that night. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, in fact, 3 years before that, the Mattachine Society had organized a sit-in, which was a beautiful way of emulating the civil rights movement to force civil action there. I think that night, much like this year, when it's the police, right? These are the people who are supposed to keep you safe. These are the people who are supposed to protect your civil liberties. Night after night, they had come to this bar, and they'd come to other bars. The Stonewall Inn certainly wasn't the only one, and they had decided they were going to come night after night until they closed it down. You had the mafia also squeezing them, right, and exploiting them. And the story goes that it was actually one butch lesbian that they were carrying out who complained that her handcuffs were too tight. There were hundreds of people outside in the streets, much of them were young youths. She complained that the handcuffs were too tight. They roughed her up, and that just sparked. And people started shouting at the police, calling them names, throwing pennies at them, throwing bottles at them, to where the police actually retreated inside the Stonewall Inn for a while. And we're covering in there. So there was all sorts of ironies over it. And much like this summer, there were riots for 4 days afterwards. And that year was when the Gay Liberation Front started, which was really considered to be the first of the gay rights movement. So there were other movements before it, but this was really the first politicized movement. And that was really what took off. And that movement really stood on the civil rights movement, right? A lot of that was also because that was the era of the civil rights movement. The women's rights movement. So the 60s and 70s really were all of these different marginalized groups starting to push back. And this year actually is the 20th, the 100th anniversary of the suffragette movement as well. So all three of those movements were really coming to the fore, starting to use civil unrest, and one was sparking the other. And some members of one movement were also members of others, right? So those tactics and strategies were also moving across the different movements there as well.
Do you think it's a fair analogy then to draw a line from the Stonewall riots to the Black Lives Matter protests that we saw this June here and throughout the country and throughout the world?
Yeah, well, if you think of Black Lives Matter really came out after Trayvon Martin. There were many more, unfortunately, many more injustices after that, murders actually by the police. But there was something about George Floyd, right? Just like there was something about the Stonewall riots. They'd been there the night before, but there was something about that where people just said enough. And if you put the summer with social unrest around COVID, disproportionate infection amongst people of color. So we're already dealing with people who are under duress, under stress. Everything that was the subject of racism was being exacerbated by COVID. And then you put the George Floyd murder on top of that, and you had the perfect fire, really. And it was the same with Stonewall, right? And these things sparked, and the people who were there at that moment decided that they were going to take it up. But I think what was different this summer is that the majority also started to back it, right? Black Lives Matter had been around for a few years, but really was considered very left, very fringe. And this summer, it's when, every minority needs the majority, right, to actually make change. And this summer is the first time, and I hope it goes beyond corporate statements and yard signs. And I have a yard sign, but I hope we don't pass that. To where we finally get the majority also asking for systemic change. And I think, for Stonewall, it took 2013 to get same-sex marriage, right? It's going to take decades. But there's a time, and I hope this summer is the start of that time to where we don't go backwards again.
We saw something different this summer too, where one of the Black Lives Matter protests focused on violence against trans women. Where you're talking one community reaching to another because members are in both communities.
Yes.
Do you think that that's something different and new? I know your Forbes article talks about the new generation and marketing to the younger generation and the ways to reach them through intersectionality. Do you think this is just a part of the younger generation, or is it something much larger than that?
It is generational. If you look at it, especially amongst LGBTQ, the numbers of people who identify as queer, that's actually quite a generationally divisive term. So for older LGBT members, they think of it as a derogatory statement. Younger people have really embraced that term. And it took HRC really to 2016 to declare that it was LGBTQ. And I'm sure it took them a while because their donors are older people, right? But eventually they had to face this. So there are generational schisms within the LGBTQ. But if there's one consistent criticism of all the social movements, it's that they have done a terrible job of dealing with intersectionality. So if you look at the women's movement, lesbians were called the Lavender Menace by Betty Friedan until finally it was decided to go in there. Women of color, the term women of color actually came from the Women's Convention in Houston, where they insisted on being a bigger part of the platform. And if you look at each of these, the gay rights movement has been criticized for being primarily white males, disenfranchising people of color, disenfranchising anybody other than a male. And in my field of study, that's in the marketplace as well. The same in the civil rights movement. When you think of civil rights history, you don't hear about the women, but if you know a Black woman, you know that she didn't sit there and watch the men do all the work, right? It doesn't happen. So I think that was the other big difference in this summer, is this intersectionalities were starting to be seen. It wasn't Black Lives Matter, it was all Black Lives Matter. And we started to see, and there is no intersection in this country that deals with more violence than Black trans women, both from within their own community and outside. And this is really the first time, ironically, also the leaders of the Stonewall riots, where everybody started to also, and it's still a small population, they're going to need the majority again. But finally, the pride flag changed, right, to where we had the triangles to represent trans, to represent the Black and the brown of color. So finally, the LGBT community is actually walking the walk as well, in terms of being truly intersectional in a way that I don't think it has been.
Let's bring Alistair into the discussion at this point. Alistair is a trans member of the Cincinnati Men's Chorus. And as we've just been discussing with Jillian, the Stonewall riots, some people think were started by white men who got upset, but in reality, a butch lesbian getting handcuffed, but also, let's not forget Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. So Alistair, why do you think it is that we don't always talk about how our movement exactly was started?
Well, I mean, as Jillian was kind of talking about, it's acceptability politics, right? We're so used to watching the narrative of the white guy fight for justice and his rights that's the story we're trained to root for. Watch any movie, any media. So it's much easier to say, oh yes, the gay rights movement was started by white guys, because everything is started and carried on the shoulders of white guys, which completely erases the actual truth. But it goes down more easily. It's easier to market. And then that's how you turn the tides of things, unfortunately.
We need to tell our truth, don't we? The men's chorus did a concert last year, Stonewall Transformations, that celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, but that also celebrated the much misbegotten T, or much forgotten T, in LGBTQ, right? Mm-hmm. You were very involved with that, along with Caden Cass, in picking out some of the music, but also you wrote some beautiful narrative pieces and presented them. And the selection of music could have been done by cis men. The writing of the narration could have been written and delivered by cis men. Why was it important that trans men were involved in the program selection as well as the narration?
Once again, I just want to forefront that Caden did like 90% of it. It's very important not to undersell the amount of work he did. He just reached out to me to write a few pieces on the side and then read them so he didn't have to. But it's important because what minority group likes having a majority group say, hey, this is what you go through, right? And tell them what their experience is supposed to be. Nobody wants that. You don't want to hear, straight people saying, this is my perception of the gay experience, and that's the story we're going to tell. It's finally starting to turn the tide there a little bit, but trans people still kind of get lumped in under that whole umbrella and erased. And so we get trans stories with cis actors and, told from the cis perspective. And it's completely inaccurate, frequently offensive. And then the trans community, who's already marginalized and has to fight for basic human dignity, also has to go against these sorts of ideas that other people have formed about us. But then to speak specifically to the concert and the music selection, one of the songs that we did that's a personal favorite of mine is This Is Me from The Greatest Showman, which is, I don't know a single queer person who doesn't say, yes, that's my anthem, right? Like, this is a beautiful song. It's, society doesn't understand me, but you know what? I'm just going to fight through it. And this is who I am. Deal with it, basically. But it's also an extremely visceral song, right? It spends a lot of time talking about the body, bruises, scars, and part of the trans experience is very literally scars. We actively scar our bodies frequently to make them appear the way that they are supposed to, so that we can feel comfortable living in our own skin. I mean, you'll find entire trans groups talking about, where did you go? What are the scars like? Can I hide them? Because the minute you see them, people know, and it's not something you want to deal with all the time. So having that song chosen for the trans portion of the concert and the solo sung by Caden, I know I was backstage practically weeping, because that, as much as it's a queer anthem, it is a trans anthem on an even deeper level. So that's why it's important, because that layer of meaning, I mean, gay people, cis gay people know, but do they really? It's not an everyday you live with it sort of experience. So it's just easy not to think about it.
Leading into that concert, the men's chorus did some sensitivity training, Trans 101. Mm-hmm. Do you find it frustrating to have to explain yourself to your own community?
Well, first of all, I would protest that maybe it's not necessarily a trans-friendly community to begin with, right? As Jillian was also saying, the trans is frequently dropped all the time for those acceptability politics. So I know that while I am ostensibly welcome in queer spaces, it is more largely because I am also gay than because I am trans. And I noticed that my experience and reception is very, very different than it is for anyone else. So it's extremely exhausting. It's kind of demoralizing. I waited 30 years to come out. Finally, I could live my truth as a gay man, and I'm still held on the outside. People misunderstand. They try to equate trans with drag. I mean, you'll have these conversations. And so not only are trans people explaining the fact that we exist to the wider community at large, but then also to the queer community. And it's extremely frustrating and exhausting. And I can't undersell how important it was to join the chorus. I had just come out, like my voice was just starting to crack that week, as Steve will attest when I auditioned. But it was the first time I walked into an all-male space and said, I'm here to join the chorus, and nobody batted an eye. So the chorus, it's trying its best, and it's a really important resource, and I very much appreciate the attempt and focus on giving trans people their voice, but there's still steps to go.
I hate having to ask other people to do my homework for me.
Yes.
But you're here and we have a platform and people
Yes.
are watching us. So let's take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
What can a cis person do to become a better trans ally?
Well, yes, do your own research.
Our trans community for me, please.
Yes, okay, I will. I am the expert, absolutely. No, part of it is do your own research, as you said. And so I'm putting this out here so people can refer to it. Just think of the little things, like normalize having tampons in a men's bathroom, right? Mm-hmm. Because, right, you're right, that look on your face, it's not something you think about, right? But some men need them, and having to ask or be put in that awkward situation would completely spoil an evening out and make somebody feel unsafe. Just walking into a men's room and seeing that they're there, it's like somebody thought about this. This is a safe space. Normalize pronoun introductions, because most of the time the people who lead in with my pronouns are 90% of the time it's a trans person. So you're outing yourself. If you own a small business, especially, so you have the personal say to do something about it, that kind of clout, look at what you can do to make the trans community feel safe. They're advertised that you are a trans-friendly environment. Like Luke, who's another member of the chorus, asked me what he could do because he works on hair. And I said, well, you'll have, trans women who don't know where they can go to get a women's cut without being looked at weird. Just say, I don't mind. Huge deal. Bars or any place where you have to check ID, sometimes our ID does not match up with what you see, right? And that can be dangerous. So we get to choose, okay, do we out ourselves by showing our ID, or do we just not get to enjoy being out among the community? So bars that are like, hey, we understand in this situation, we are aware that this is a thing, put it out there, advertise it, make a noise about it. Say, this is a safe space. We will not put up with shenanigans against you. Come here. We want you here. And that is a huge, huge step.
Well, we've done a lot of talking. How about some more music? This is a clip from the Cincinnati Men's Chorus concert, The L Word, one of the series of Pride concerts that focused on a different aspect of our community, this focusing on contributions by lesbian artists and songwriters. This was done in the summer of 2018. The song is Freedom by Tret Fury, and this was arranged by Steve Malloy.
Oh, freedom. Carry freedom in your heart, carry justice as a goal, carry love in every fiber of the fabric of your soul. Carry freedom in your heart, carry justice as a goal, carry love in every sound. Carry freedom in your heart, carry justice as a goal, carry love in every sound.
that is your Cincinnati Men's Chorus. You've heard the mission statements from Muse and the Men's Chorus, and you know that they're dedicated to lifting every voice in our community. In addition to having fun tonight and enjoying great music and a great discussion, we hope that you're able to support their work by making a contribution. Any amount helps at all. We set a goal for the evening of $4,000, and we're over halfway there at this point, and we've made it there through small donations. Just think what could happen if you made a bigger one. But we know times are hard. So any amount that you can donate will really be appreciated and will help these groups to continue the amazing work that they do. So speaking of the amazing work that they do, things have changed. We know we're not able to gather and do the thing that means the most to us, sing. So a lot of our groups are creating virtual videos. Muse has done a wonderful thing. They've taken their song, Sisters, You Keep Me Fighting by Patty Huntington. They've performed it many times, but they've added a little bit of dialogue to it. This particular arrangement is by Diana Porter, and it has additional text by Muse that specifically addresses some of the violence against trans women that's been occurring. So let's listen to Muse, Sisters, You Keep Me Fighting.
Muse Cincinnati's Women's Choir stands in support of justice for Breonna Taylor, Oluwatoyin Salu, Dominique Fells, and Rhea Milton.
And the countless other Black women and transgender women of color who have been killed due to racism and bigotry, either at the hands of police or the hands of homophobic racists.
It's time that we stand up for Black women in America. It's time that we as women stand together. It's time that we keep each other lifted in this lifelong fight to be seen, respected, and valued. For freedom voices never die.
Sisters, you keep me fighting. You keep me strong. The struggle we are waging is gonna take our whole lives long. But when I look around and see your faces, see the fire behind those eyes, I know it's a battle we will stand and win, for freedom voices never die.
As women, our fight for gender equality is never ending, as we fight for equal pay and treatment. The basic human right to control what happens with our own bodies, cis or trans, queer or straight, Black or white. Yet we can't even feel safe in our own homes.
But even as the fight continues and the crises multiply, we must keep each other strong. So keep that fire behind those eyes, because we must win this battle.
Women battle in war-torn countries for a just and peaceful place. Starvation, killing, loss, and grief have been carved on each woman's face. As women all around the world, we
That is the wonderful voices. Those are the wonderful voices of Muse. Let's bring in Muse's artistic director, Jillian. Jillian, I'm going to ask a really simple question. Does it matter that Muse currently has a Black woman as the artistic director?
Yes, absolutely. Given that Muse is a feminist and social justice driven organization in America, many of the social and civic issues that this country has faced have been at the plight of African Americans. And so being in a position where I can take the opportunity to tell the story of the African American experience and the intersectionality between various social and socioeconomic issues that have risen over American and world history, and how those things have and still affect the Black community. That's my responsibility, but it's also my honor. And also the visibility of seeing a Black woman in a position of influence is important for the next generation of Black women conductors, musicians, and composers. And becoming the music and artistic director of such an amazing organization as Muse becomes a goal that then is achievable because they've seen it done before.
Now, there was a wonderful article, if people look it up online, in Cincinnati Movers and Makers that highlighted you, Steve, and of course, the director of the children's chorus, Jason. And it highlighted the fact that you are all currently Black people who are working as artistic directors. You, in that article, relate a bit of a story with bringing the song Mississippi Goddamn to Muse. Would you talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure. So in November of 2018, we had the opportunity to resurrect the New Spirituals concert tradition that Linda Tillery had spearheaded for so many years. And in this concert, we collaborated with Dr. Tammy Kernodle of Miami University. And we told the story of Black women's contributions to protest music, specifically from the post-Reconstruction era to modern day. And so we highlighted staple protest musicians and songs, including Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddamn. Well, of course, it was received with some internal backlash, of course, because of certainly the repeated use of the word goddamn, and for obvious reasons. But I found this to be a teachable moment to educate all of our singers regarding the why. Why do we find value in including and performing the song? And then how to contextualize it within the timeline. And so certainly we've performed songs before that have had, one or two curse words in them, but this particular song, it used profanity with a purpose. And so Nina wrote the song in response to the killing of Medgar Evers in Mississippi and the 16th Street church bombing that killed the 4 children. And so she was fed up and she was angry. So, to get caught up on the repeated use of goddamn, that if you get so caught up on that it obstructs your ability to internalize the message and the passion of the song, then you've missed the point of the song in its entirety. Certainly that whole concert was heavy. We premiered Strange Fruit in that exact same concert. But there was so much to digest for the singers and our audience regarding the harsh realities of the Black experience during that time. And certainly I do respect the values of our singers, as some still chose not to sing that song, and that's okay, so long as they understood the why.
Steve, let me put that same question to you, since you were also featured in that article. Does it matter that the Cincinnati Men's Chorus has a Black artistic director?
God, yes.
And why?
Getting there. So I have been a member of the LGBTQ choral movement for over 30 years. My first third of that was I spent as a singer and an accompanist. And then the last 2/3 of that, over 20 years, I've been working my way up as arranger, composer, assistant director, and now director. Back in, my first 10 or so years in this field, I only knew of 2 African-American directors of gala choruses that I had seen. There may have been more, but I knew of 2. Currently, with Jillian and I and a few others, we may make up 10%, may make up 10% of over 190 choruses in the LGBTQ plus movement. So what does that tell you?
A lot.
Now, I do know, being in this for so long, that there have been, BIPOC people in board positions as presidents of choruses, but really not in front in artistic director positions until just the last really 5 to 10 years. So that's why it's important to, and not just from visual, but also to make other people feel that they can belong to this organization, and also tell stories that otherwise were not told before because those directors did not have that perspective.
Jason Alexander Holmes was the name I was searching for earlier, and no one sent it to me. It just came to me.
Yes, Cincinnati Boy Choir, not the children's choir.
Cincinnati Boy Choir, thank you. So I don't want to miscredit that. And the article is still available if you check out Cincinnati Magazine. Steve, in it, you tell a story.
Movers and Makers.
Movers and Makers. That was Movers and Makers.
Yes.
In the Movers and Makers article, you talked about an interesting experience about why it matters when it comes to programming with the first Pride concert you took over. Would you care to relive that story for us a little bit?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The previous director had been released from his contract. So each concert that year was directed by an interim director. And I was to direct the Pride concert for that year. And there had been an emblem designed for that concert that consisted of a lion's head that looked like something straight out of Lion King, with the letters Pride underneath it, also kind of in a Lion King font. And it was supposed to talk about the intersectionality between African music, not African American music, but African music.
African music.
Yes, and the GLBTQ movement. I'm not saying that those movements don't cross in some way, but when people are telling you that they were planning to program Africa by Toto, which has nothing to do with either African music or any civil rights movement that I could think of, I thought, okay, let's rethink this. So I went with the intersectionality between African American music and the GLBTQ movement. And which was wonderful. We did music by RuPaul, new pieces by Nico and Vince. We did Destiny's Child. We did Diana Ross.
Sylvester.
So, no, not that concert. We wanted to.
Not in that concert.
No, that was in the Transformation Stonewall concert.
But you very importantly did Randall Thompson's work.
Joel Thompson's work.
Joel Thompson's work. What's going on with me today? And it's written down. Joel Thompson's work. The 7 last words of the Unarmed, which would not have been written by Randall Thompson.
No, it would not. 7 last words by African American contemporary classical composer Joel Thompson. Takes the last words of 7 unarmed Black men who were shot by police officers. And it's a 15-minute work, but it's a heavy 15 minutes. Yeah. We did the original version, which is with piano quintet, 4 strings and piano. And in programming it at the same time was the second trial of Sam DuBose, an unarmed Black man, shot by a university police officer, not even a Cincinnati police officer, but some guy who worked on a student campus. And in the second time that trial happened, it ended in a mistrial hung jury. So that piece really meant a lot to us. And we had some wonderful, uncomfortable conversations about race relations in this city and in the GLBT movement and where we stood and where we're going. And I thought, that was such a moving experience to be able to program and perform that work, but also to have these conversations, I've been comfortable in being uncomfortable all my life. It was one of the first times that I really felt being in a gala chorus, a GLBTQIA chorus, that I was welcome in doing.
Jillian, you've also had those uncomfortable, teachable moments with Mississippi Goddamn. How do you know when you're programming music just how far you can push people without alienating them, both in the choir and in the audience?
Definitely. One of the things that I try to always impress upon the singers in Muse is that they're there for two reasons. They're fine musicians who contribute to the musical excellence of the organization, and they're empowered activists who contribute to the social and civic change in our community. And so we have an obligation to push that envelope and to educate ourselves and our community about the things that affect them far more than they think, and to give voice to the underrepresented. And we are diverse even within our own representation, and that's by design. So I have to get the singers themselves on board first, because they then have to help me to deliver our message to our audience. They have to help me deliver the narrative. They have to help me compel the audience to see the world differently. And so the balance starts internally. So we have open discussions about concert content and historical relevance and Muse's voice in all of it. And so I don't see a difference between crossing the line with the singers and crossing the line with the audience, because we are our audience first. And so we can't tell a convincing story if we don't believe and find value in it first.
Steve, we talked with Alistair about the importance of authentic voices telling their own stories. And I also mentioned in your introduction that you are a composer. Tell us a little bit about the Bayard Rustin piece.
All right. So, being in this movement for as long as I have, I've sung pieces about Matthew Shepard. I've sung pieces about Harvey Milk. And I've always wondered, when am I going to sing a piece about somebody who looks like me? But I didn't think from the composers that we were commissioning pieces from that would ever happen. If I wanted that to happen, I needed to instigate something. Saw this wonderful documentary on Bayard Rustin. The name of the documentary is called Brother Outsider. Look it up on PBS. Black gay man organized the 1963 March on Washington, where Martin Luther King who gave his I Have a Dream speech. It was all him. He organized that whole thing with no fax, no computer. And he was the one who introduced Martin Luther King to civil disobedience, to Gandhiism. If there wasn't a Bayard Rustin, there would not be a Martin Luther King.
And nobody knows about him.
No, because, he was openly gay in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And it's hard enough being Black during that time, but to be Black and openly gay, and he lived unabashedly proud, period. And I thought, that's a man that I could look up to and I want to sing about and I want to talk about. So I collaborated with Jane Ramsire Miller, and we wrote this 45-minute work for mixed choir and two narrators. You helped with some of the lyrics, and oh, stop it. And and it has been, performed by at least 6 choirs around the United States, and more people are asking about it and wanting to perform it. And everywhere it's been performed, audiences have been moved because they did not know of this man, or they were taken back to a time because they were part of those civil rights marches. It's just, a piece that needs to be heard and seen. And it's so nice to also have repertoire about people who look like me, and that is happening more and more.
And it's got to be written by people that look like you.
Yes.
Let's listen to some music. Let's listen to first, from the 7 Last Words, movement 7, John Crawford. And as you said, each movement are the last words of a Black man killed at the hands of the police, and all of the men were unarmed. In this movement, John Crawford's last words, which ring so true, I can't breathe. So here is I Can't Breathe, Movement 7, from the 7 last words of the Unarmed by Joel Thompson, from the Cincinnati Men's Chorus Pride 2017 concert. I encourage you, if you've not experienced that piece before, to look it up on YouTube. All of the movements, an incredibly moving piece. While we're setting up our next video, I want to remind you that if you haven't yet contributed, we would ask you to consider giving your support to these essential organizations, Muse and the Cincinnati Men's Chorus. You can click on our links and donate and help us reach that goal, which, again, both groups had to lose concerts, fundraising, and so much due to the pandemic. This will help go a long way, and we appreciate your support. Now, why don't we listen to a new virtual video created by Muse, and it's the piece that Jillian was just talking about. This is Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddamn. This arrangement is by Dr. Lori Hicks, and it was commissioned by Muse.
About Mississippi.
The name of this tune is Mississippi Goddamn. And I mean every word of it.
was a pretty powerful number. Both of those were pretty powerful numbers. I also want to mention that was Pone's Dance Company in the video with the Cincinnati men's chorus. We're about $3,700. We're almost to our $4,000 goal. If you can donate, we'd really appreciate it. We're going to wrap up our discussion this evening by bringing in Mark Johnson and Charmaine Moore-Cassini. You two have been very patient. And you two embody what we're talking about today, intersectionality, because you live in multiple communities coming together into the choruses that you're in. Steve mentioned the fact that going to gala, you don't see a lot of artistic directors who look like him. And I must say, the galas that I've been to, and I've been to several of them, as have both of you, you don't see a lot of singers who look like you either. Charmaine, what's that experience like for you?
A good question. I am a classically trained musician. I'm used to going into spaces and being the only person of color, first of all. So that part isn't so unusual, but there's something about walking into a queer space and having stories of oppression told and stories of healing and transformation and coming into your own and being recognized, but not seeing anyone who looks like me going through that same revelation was a little bit strange. So yeah, in a word, it's a little strange.
Mark, I see you nodding.
Yes, I agree with Charmaine, because I also come from a classical background as well. And being, not only at a university where there's less than 10% Black, but then when you go to gala, my first time I went to gala, I had this expectation that I would see several varieties of the hues of color that's out there, but then I was a bit disappointed to see how limited it was. Even in some cities where you expected that chorus to have more people of color, and then they didn't. It's like, I don't understand. What is that all about? What are they doing? How could they not make that mix happen? So, but like Charmaine says, because you're in that environment, you've been in that environment for such a long time, sometimes you don't pay attention to that, but then there's other times where you do pay attention, because it's like being slammed right in your face. There's not someone like you who's here, or as many people like you who's here.
I found it really surprising that cities like Chicago, Seattle, LA, New York, where they have lots of people of all kinds of colors and hues, they don't have the representation and diversity that CMC and that Muse do. And sometimes not even proportional representation, sometimes not even the numbers. You can see a 250 person chorus and 3 people of color in it. And as a result, Charmaine, unfortunately, or fortunately, it seems like every time I go to a gala, Muse is doing a training on diversity for the choruses.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting. Muse has been very intentional about recruiting and telling the story of marginalized people, and then having those people be present in the space to tell their stories, teach us firsthand how to sing in a style, or how to appreciate the stories, how to respect the stories and the traditions of marginalized people. So the work that we do with every concert that has anything to do with something that's not just, something that's very classical or very bel canto, beautiful, traditional choral stuff, it's important that we take the time to learn that. And so it's a gift really to get to go to a space like Gala and our other organizations like the Sister Singers organizations, even ACDA, and get to go and tell the story of the people whose stories aren't being told, and then delivering performance practices that help them to sing it more authentically.
Now the Gala festivals happen every 4 years. Do you see a change as you do these diversities trainings every 4 years, or do you feel like you're covering the same ground?
Sometimes it's a lot of the same stuff. Lately, there have been more intentional panel discussions that deal with the subject matter head on. One of the big things I always say is if you want to see yourself like, sorry, it's the other way around. If you want for your membership to reflect this diversity, then you have to be performing the music that reflects that community. And people have to see themselves on the stage in order to want to support your organization. And so beating that drum over and over again, I think it deserves to be told. I think it's easy for us to pick up an arrangement, a piece of music that's been arranged by Steve Malloy, and it's so wonderful. He's got all the great blue notes in there and all the great syncopation, but to never work with Steve Malloy and learn how to do it authentically is a missed opportunity. So I think people are getting it, and serving on panel discussions similar to this one, telling the stories, makes people curious, and it makes them want to see who's in their community who could be a spoken word artist on their concert, or really dig deeper into why they lose minority representation in their organization, and really deal with those hard issues. I have to say, I was really impressed. One gala I went to was, I think it was a 2016 gala, the one before the one that was supposed to happen this summer. And there was this whole multicultural theme around it. And I saw this huge array. Mark, were you there? There was this huge array of artists from different cultural backgrounds and representations. It was really fascinating and beautiful, and warmed my heart significantly, because then it felt like, you know, the story is being told in enough spaces that people are getting it.
It's important to recruit more diverse people into your organization, but it's even more important to retain those folks. Mark, you had an interesting story that we shared about new members coming into the men's chorus at the beginning of the season, but not lasting very long.
Correct. So as I embark on my 30th season with the men's chorus.
You were 10 years old when you started.
Exactly. So I know of two of us who have been in there, two men of color who've been part of the group since then. So I sit back and look at when we have, such as I think last season, we started off with about 10 men of color, 10 African-American guys, Black guys who came in for the first couple of rehearsals. Fantastic. So for me, my responsibility was to try to connect with them in those first couple of rehearsals, to remind them, you know, for me, I'm happy that they're here. Let me know if you have any questions about the chorus. So I'm trying to reach out to them so that they know that they have this connection, and I want to have a connection with them. But then as the season continued, they started dropping off and not returning. And always my question is, why did they not return? And sometimes when you get a response of, well, I don't know, then my next question is, well, did you reach out to them? Because we do have a membership chair who now happens to be Bruce. But I think the responsibility of the membership person is to find out, just like we do in our workspace. If somebody is leaving unexpectedly from a position, you want to know, why are they leaving? What was it? Something we said? Was it something we done? In our case, is it the music that you found to be offensive, or is it not enough of the type of music that you really need to keep you driving, keep you coming back? And then it's like, well, what role can I play to help with that? To help talk to these people to find out what were they looking for, so that we have that feedback, so we know how we can grow in that number, because eventually there's going to be some of us won't be around anymore.
And you know, it's I think personally, it's important that if you're asking something of somebody, you have a connection with that person. So as a white person asking white people to come and sing, that's one connection. But as a white person asking a Black person or a Latinx person or an Asian Pacific Islander to come and sing, maybe somebody who looks like them asking them to come sing is important. So not just who your membership person is, but what does your membership committee look like, and what efforts are they going through?
Yeah, and what responsibility can you pass on to someone else who can help connect with that person, help them understand who can talk, sometimes you have to talk their language in order to get them to be pulled in. And why do you want me to be part of this group? So, I mean, it's just like for me, why do I keep coming year after year, season after season and continue? Because the people who look like me also help to make up the people who are in the audience. So if I want to see more people of my color in the audience, there needs to be more of us who's helping to pull those people in order to get that look in the audience, the look on stage, and understand how that connection is there.
Charmaine, do you agree that more diversity on the stage equals more diversity in the audience?
Absolutely. I know my first official Muse concert that I attended was a New Spirituals concert, similar to the one that Jillian referenced a little while ago. And when I saw that and I saw so much diversity on the stage and I heard the music they were singing, I said, this is it. I got to do this. Like, I love singing, and I've never heard an ensemble like this before in my life with such an array of music. And they sang in multiple languages and with soloists and instrumentalists, and they were all wearing this color or this blue. And I just wanted to be a part of it. And then once I got there, I realized the community that exists and the respect that Muse members and the Muse community is trying to develop around the cultural norms of people of color, including just from relaxing attendance policies, because people have kids, people are taking care of older family members, people are taking care of someone else's family members. And I'm not saying only Black people deal with it, but I know that I have dealt with it, and I live very close to my family on purpose so that I can be present for them when necessary. And so that flexibility's got to be built in, and the presence of having spirituality in a choral setting and talking about the tragedy and smiling through the tragedy, laughing, dancing through the tragedies, all of those things, it's all part of the culture. And I know that Muse has embraced a lot of that because of their experience singing Black music.
So we're in this fun age of COVID-19 where we're not allowed to gather and sing. And we're doing virtual recordings, as we've seen tonight, and the men's courses put some out as well. And it looks like we're going to be doing that for a little while. Do either of you have any suggestions as we try to recruit? Both of our groups are now trying to recruit new members to sing with us for our new seasons, and we're having to do it virtually. Any suggestions to you about how it is that we might, while recruiting, try to recruit a more diverse membership?
Well, I think that, of course, unless you're looking at the people face to face, which I may or may not be sitting in on some of these auditions, if somebody would shoot me a message, say, for instance, say, hey, we just had this Black guy who auditioned that I spoke to him about, you would want to reach out to him to talk him through some of the things about the course, if there's any questions that he may want to ask openly as a Black person coming in. And not only a Black person, it could also be a white person who could reach out because their partner happens to be Black. And they want, how does all of this weave together? How do we make a family out of all of these people who come in? Because basically both of these courses are families outside of their own blood relative family. We are a family unit. So how do I fit into this family? How can I weave into this family? How can me as a current course member help them feel comfortable coming into this family and making sure that they're welcome to this family? So that's going to be a little bit difficult to do because you cannot always read a person's body language in person versus versus the virtual. So you have to really pay attention to some of the things that the person is saying and not miss those opportunities to do any type of follow-up so that you can still engage them, keep them interested. That's going to be the key thing. We won't be able to see each other face to face and be able to look at somebody and say, Is there something going on that you would like to share? Because they could be hurting, but you may not see that when you're in a virtual rehearsal. So there's little clues that we'll have to pay attention to as we're doing these virtual rehearsals and auditioning people to see what's out there, what's happening. Oh, it looks like somebody needs to reach out to this person because they didn't seem like they were with the rehearsal today, things of that nature.
Charmaine, what would you like to add to that?
One thing that I can say that we're doing that is helping, we're breaking up into small groups every week, and we have our small 5 or 6 person group that we're responsible for, and we check in on them and we make sure that they have what they need, sending funny memes, you know, keeping folks up to date on things, following up on issues that maybe a person has had. And we have a strong buddy system in place. So we, through the membership committee for especially new members, to hold their hand a bit through the process. Jillian is very hands-on with the membership as well, and she really focuses on the strengths of each individual and works to pair folks who might maybe be in the same quadrant of the city. And like we have some elderly members right now who are not as tech savvy, so they can't participate in all of the virtual choir stuff, but we do what we can to get them engaged because the people in their quadrant of the city show up and make it happen. So there's just a lot of commitment related to having a hands-on approach. It's not just through the computer screen with us. We call, we social distance on the porch, we do what the person needs in the moment. We also share books and things that we have been reading about current events, white fragility and other things like that, other books that everyone's reading right now, sharing ideas from that respect, sharing ideas about how to raise your kids in the time of COVID and going through school issues that everyone's dealing with. And then partnering with other organizations like Gala. Steve Malloy mentioned their new handbook, A New Harmony, Equity, Access, and Belonging, which is a new development this year. It's on their website, the galacourses.org website. It's really terrific. And so working through all of these community building and storytelling methods that don't involve being face-to-face. We just have to get creative about it.
And we have to keep singing.
Yes.
Yes, and we make videos. So we're making videos and we're doing sectionals over Zoom, and we're singing to each other in our backyards and like sharing CDs and sharing songs over Spotify and reminiscing about music that we love. And I don't know, it's a really tough time. So this virtual choir experience is really rejuvenating, even though we're not singing together. At the end of it all, we get really great videos, right, and we can share those with our friends and family and fans.
And I think something to add on to that, sometimes it's not important to have a rehearsal. Sometimes it's important to have that moment for dialogue, just to find out, sometimes asking the question, how are things with, I'm gonna use the statement, how are things with your soul? So you find out, how's that person feeling? So sometimes you just need that break in the action, and maybe your virtual rehearsal might only involve you doing one song, but in that moment in time, it was more important to have that conversation, to do a check on how your members are feeling at that point, or what's going on in their lives, because you may not always see this one person or connect with this person, but here's one opportunity for everybody to hear what's going on with that person, if they want to share it. And somebody else may read something to someone who doesn't want to share something, to pick up the phone afterwards and call them and say, hey, what's going on? You seem to be kind of hesitant. I sense there's something coming on. Is there something you want to talk about? They could tell you yes, they could tell you no, but you never know.
This has been a wonderful discussion. And Maria, I'm going to surprise you by asking you to bring up everybody's video so that we can see our wonderful panel as we say goodnight to each other, I also want to say while we're doing that, through the generous donations, we have reached our goal for the evening of $4,000. But that doesn't mean that you can't continue to donate because we still need the money. So if you're able to, if you watch this, maybe you're watching this as a recorded version because it'll be available on both the websites for Muse and the Men's Chorus later. You can continue to donate. You can click the button and you can help us push even further over the limit, which would make Michelle the happiest person on earth, I think. Our panel has been wonderful tonight. You've just heard Mark Johnson and Charmaine Moore-Kitzini, our wonderful directors, Jillian Harrison-Jones and Steve Malloy. And we began the evening with Jillian Oakenfull and Alistair Kraft. You've all been terrific tonight, but there's also been some people behind the scenes. Michelle Hall did a wonderful job organizing everything. And Maria Moore-Kitzini, you would not be seeing or hearing anything without her terrific efforts tonight. We also want to thank ArtsWave Pride and PNC Bank for making this evening possible. You can learn, oh, and of course the members of Muse and the Cincinnati Men's Chorus who made the videos possible, right? You can learn more about these organizations at www.musechoir.org, CincinnatiMen'sChorus.org, and artswave.org. And the .org tells you they could all use money if you have some to give. So we'd appreciate that. I also want to make sure that we remember today is the 100th anniversary of the signing of the ratification of the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote. So everybody needs to register and vote. And I can't think of a better way to go out than with the music by Siri Imani and this wonderful gift by Muse, Bassa. Everyone have a wonderful evening and let's enjoy Muse.
Hey, come have your fun, huh? This beat go dum da da dum dum. My heart go rum pa pa pum pum. Everybody have a run in the sun. No, I'm thinking you a ton now. Gon' have your fun, huh? This beat go dum da da dum dum. My heart go rum pa pa pum pum. Everybody have a run in the sun. No, I'm thinking you a ton. I've been waiting for days like this. I feel this beat. Sun never shine like this. I feel this heat. Heart never sound like this. I feel that beat. Words never come like this. They sound so neat. Finally feel alive though. Tryna break all these psychos. She tryna set me like Geico. She say I need to cry more. Really cool. Nah, I don't really know, huh? Everybody know it's hard where I come from. And that hunger hit your heart like a stun gun. Eating honey buns till the first of the month come unsung. Ain't gotta hit my heart to know I got one. I ain't gotta see a dollar cause I'm rich, son. I don't care if you still in the slums. We gon' party like we on the top of the world. Hollywood mountain, gon' have you fun, huh? This beat go dum da da dum dum. My heart go rum pum pum pum. Everybody have a run in the sun. No, I'm thinking you a ton now. Gon' have you fun, huh? This beat go dum da da dum dum. My heart go rum pum pum pum. Everybody have a run in the sun. No, I'm thinking you a ton. You can't really trust, so you be simming hella uptight. You so fucking cute when you be looking at the moonlight. Tell you what to do when you be looking back like yeah right. Energy like that is cool with me, swear it's alright. Capricorn moon, but you fucking with my sun sign. Leo in Mars, baby I'ma be a tough guy. Do you study stars? This way you draw the mind. I mean it's fine, I don't wanna waste your time. Tell me how you feel, huh? I don't want that love if it ain't real, huh? Say you wanna trust, let's make a deal, huh? I'ma put my heart on the line now, fake forever seal, huh? Kinda trill, huh? Hella ill, huh? Say you wanna build in the field, huh? How you feel, huh? Might be the one, huh? Yes, I'm done. Found a horse, we can ride off in the sun. Now tell me how you feel, huh? This beat go dum da da dum dum. My heart go rum pum pum pum. Everybody have a run in the sun. No, I'm feeling you a ton.
Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you to our panel, our sponsors, ArtsWave Pride and PNC Bank. And don't forget to support your local organizations, Muse, Cincinnati's Women's Choir, and the Cincinnati Men's Chorus. Have a wonderful evening.